We are a team. As storytellers and dreamers,
there is always magic to discover.
Once upon a time,
a Las Vegas showgirl
and a comedian magician,
figured out that even with different perspectives,
our adventures and experiences together
are really just
one big
caper. You have found yourself at One Big Caper. This is a chat show with myself and my partner Athena, and all the content is kind of driven by questions that we're asked by you. We this is totally unscripted. We have another prompt that we intend to attack, and this one is an important one. We are both professional entertainers. We are a romantic couple as a result of having met backstage. Mm-hmm. And we do our best to try to blend in the suburban Colorado experience, which is impossible. But
this was requested by Michael.
Michael B. has requested that we discuss unruly audiences.
Dealing with bad crowds.
Dealing with bad crowds was the wording of the prompt, but we met each other not only backstage, but backstage at a burlesque show, which I believe is one such opportunity to discover all the different ways that a crowd can be unruly,
totally,
or bad.
Yeah.
And I credit those years. I was in burlesque for 13 years. I did just under 3,000 shows. Mm-hmm. And I credit those with the most important developments in my abilities as an entertainer, and certainly my tastes for eating hecklers for breakfast.
I love it. Yeah, there was some people. Yeah,
I've seen all kinds of things. I'll give you a few stories during this episode about some of the crazier experiences that we've had on stage with unruly audiences, and that's ignoring all of the times that someone had too much to drink and made a mess, or fights that have happened between audience members while the show is happening. I've seen that many times. I saw one audience member getting very upset with the bar, decided to go up to the bar and tell the bartender, give a piece of her mind or whatever, and want a full refund for the show and everything. And then and it was a ridiculous request. Mm-hmm. But that person turned immediately around to stomp off and ran smack into a pole and knocked her teeth out.
Not having a good day.
Yeah. We've had fog machines go off during shows, and then all of a sudden the fire department is crashing a burlesque show, and I can tell you the burlesque dancers were not unhappy about that one.
Oh yeah. And you would think it was the firefighters that were not unhappy about it.
The firefighters were also not displeased that they had to report. Yeah. What do you? I have more stories, and I'll share them. Very specific ones come to mind, but what do you have to say about, like, you're in a different position? So I, as an MC or an entertainer, I have a microphone.
Yeah.
That gives me a lot more power to deal with a bad audience, or somebody who's acting unruly.
Right, and so like the worst audiences I've seen are the burlesque crowds. Like, I don't know why. It's like when people go to New Orleans and they
let loose.
They just let loose, and it's like,
or Las Vegas.
There's no laws that prohibit you doing certain things on the street and all of these things, and it's just like, where do the rules go? They're there. The laws are there too, but people just think, well, we could just act however we want. So of course, burlesque crowds, from our perspective, have the worst reputation. But even as a showgirl in Las Vegas, we had people that wanted photos and videos of the show.
That's a big no-no in a topless show.
Why would you do that?
They make a big announcement. I got to see the show with Athena, and they make a big announcement. They even have a giant camera prop
Yeah, and that wasn't
to
there when
explain,
I was in the show.
You
Yeah.
cannot take pictures during this show. Still, while we were there, even after the warnings and everything, we saw somebody get dragged out of the audience, and probably went to an office somewhere
Yeah.
and got a.
When the lead dancer is covering herself, like there's a problem.
Everybody in the booth knows, like, there's a reason our dancer is covering.
Our dancer is covering. Yeah. We need to find out what it is.
Yep.
Yeah, because back in the day, it was not just to protect the women, but it was also to protect the designers' costumes and basically the integrity of the show, and
the choreography.
And the choreography, like it was like the whole thing. It was to protect the show, not just the women. But yeah, I mean, we would hear horror stories backstage. The girls would say, "Oh, so and so appeared on a billboard in Europe because they got photos," and it was kind of just part of. It was almost a game. We would talk to our security guard Randy and be like, "Randy, camera." We would tell him which row, and he would go get it. Like, he was the best. When he was off, it sucked because those guys didn't care. This guy cared about us. He was a security guard in the show probably at least for 25 years.
I hear a lot about Officer Randy.
Yeah. I want to get him on the podcast so bad, but he's a hermit now. He's probably on some ranch riding lots of horses. Definitely like the epitome of a cowboy. So anyway, that's, to us is an unruly or a bad audience. You're not behaving the way you're supposed to be because there are actually rules when you go to a topless show. Like, don't
this
take
is a
pictures
show,
of
mind
the
you.
girls.
I'm recognizing that you might not know what we're talking about. If you know Athena's work, then you know exactly what we're talking about. But this is the largest showgirl spectacular ever to exist. Certainly in Las Vegas. I don't
Reno was bigger.
Reno has bigger. Oh well, they had the airplane. Yeah.
It was the size. The stage was double what would you believe?
There were 100 dancers on stage, but
150 when it opened. Anyway, okay.
When it opened. As an audience member, when you go into this showroom, which is very lavishly decorated, you feel, if you're not wearing cocktail attire, at least you feel underdressed, or you should.
You should.
In Las Vegas, unfortunately, there is a kind of tourist who would not respect, certain dress code rules and that kind of thing, which is a terrible shame because one should dress in a certain way to show respect for the performers and the other audience members. Nevertheless, it's hard for me to imagine that people would misbehave in an environment that is a necktie, a dressy affair.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the velvet chairs, like velvet.
It's very, very lavishly decorated.
Yeah.
And large chandeliers and
things coming out of the ceiling. Like, it just, I heard even worse horror stories than what happened when I was in the show. People taking pictures, but like people walking in there with a bucket of fried chicken and eating like so. These are some of the things that we encounter as entertainers, and we're there to put on a show, and there are different levels of shows happening. So there's, the seedier dive bars where people are throwing stuff on the stage probably and just heckling whoever's on stage, even if they are a good entertainer. And then you have shows where, people are dressed to the nines in their best because they paid $350 for the ticket, for one ticket, So there's like that scale that we're talking. But there can be people misbehaving at any of those venues.
it can happen anyway, for sure.
Yeah. So for us, I think the majority of our experience of unruly or bad crowds would be burlesque.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there's so much more alcohol involved. And
I have, now, given what I do, unfortunately there is a small percentage of people who are challenged by the kind of work that I do. They are under the impression that my work as a magician or mentalist is designed to make them feel stupid or to challenge their level of intellect. And
they get defensive.
And I've seen people get defensive. Yeah. And additionally, and this goes back to needing experience to understand certain things, but I have been threatened because somebody thought that I was flirting with their date. As the entertainer, if I seem to favor one person over another, that can be threatening in a different way.
Maybe that person was a narcissist and you were getting shiny
Most
to this
likely.
other person,
Yeah,
and they couldn't
most likely.
deal with that
Yeah.
fragile ego.
But I have to learn how to deal with that. But
Yeah.
that's an example of potentially bad audience.
Yeah, that's a good example, actually.
Yeah,
Because
and
you
these are
interact with
experiences,
people
right?
face to face.
These are experiences with a good-sized audience, or even kind of. I used to do table-to-table kind of stuff too, so more ambient entertainment. And I'm dealing with maybe just two people, a couple, and I can be threatening to one or both of them, and I have to learn how to control that. I have to figure out how to, how do I turn this into something positive for all of us who are here right now.
Or, as a server, I deal with tables all the time
Yep.
that people are fighting
Oh yeah.
and yelling at each other when I get there to say, "Hey, here's your water."
Want to see a magic trick? No.
So
you gotta know your crowd.
you got to know your crowd. Like
Yep.
that's like I think the number one thing. So maybe we should talk about how, because I'm not always on a mic, but yes, it is a stage when I am serving. I am entertaining them. I'm making them feel at home, and I mean that's what entertainers do. They make their audience feel at home and safe so that they can relax and enjoy the show, right? That's what we do. So we set that stage, and I can talk about I don't know, should we give some tips how to handle mad crowds?
I can. I mean, I can cite specific ways that I've dealt. I can give you the situation and tell you how I handle this. The Juicy Bit is a show that we produced together. I performed as a character, which gives me a little more license to do things that are out of character for my normal stage persona. It was a burlesque show, and we had some people who in the front who had imbibed a little much, but they bought their front row seat and they were there, and it was 30% into the show, and one girl interrupts one of my MC spots to tell me that I should really have her friend on stage because she's a professional ballerina. And then I see a leg kick up in the air. And they were insistent, both of them, that she get on stage. So this is a problem for a host of reasons. But number one, the venue does not have insurance when this person falls off of the stage. They're not going to want to deal with that. So it would be irresponsible of me to indulge this person. I've already been interrupted, so that's irresponsible. What I told these people over the microphone in front of everybody in attendance, I said, nobody paid to see you. That was enough to make them so mad that they called me a name and left. And I was kind of relieved, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't have to deal with it anymore. In retrospect, it's one of those things where you write or think of what you should have said, and I think it might have been better of me to have said something like, if you were a professional dancer, you would not be crashing somebody else's show. Nevertheless, I handled that one. I tried to get it quick, because I'm wasting a whole lot of people's time if I have to deal with these people.
Yeah.
If I don't make it funny in part of the show, or if I'd rather just get it done. I'm not Don Rickles. I'm not an insult comic. I'm not up there to like roast somebody.
Right.
There are tons of canned lines that other comedians have written to try to handle situations like this. Like, I don't go to your job and
Tell you
kick
how
the
to
broom
do
out of
it.
your
Yeah.
hands. And,
Yeah.
I haven't ever had to resort to using stuff like that.
Well, and maybe that's why this person asked
Sure.
about how you handle it, because you're so like
I'm proper.
Proper
Well,
and
so
then-
that character was not quite as proper. When I'm the proper me, I'll tell you how I deal with it. I often make them part of the show in a very specific way. And I don't like to embarrass people. I'm not out to do that. And again, I'm not an insult comic, so I'm not going to insult people. But I have many times just used silence and my dad face, my disappointed or upset dad face, and they'll stop. They just stop.
Do they?
Very
Okay.
often, yeah.
Well, the
Because
lady
if
in
the silence,
Lafayette
the
didn't do
silence
that.
is scarier than if I were to like
Oh,
freak
right.
out or whatever.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. Like silence or holding still as a dancer is terrifying. Not just for you, but for the audience. It makes people lean forward, right? So the lady in Lafayette, do you remember the recent show you did? She was making the audience laugh.
Oh, well, I was blind, so I don't have, that doesn't come to memory. I do a piece on stage where I
Well, she
dramatically
screwed
blindfold
up the
myself.
whole illusion before that.
Right.
She didn't follow instructions, and I don't think it was because she was drunk. I think she just does not know how to follow instructions. And I see this all day, every day at work because the host tells them, scan the QR code for the menu. And then they sit there for 5 minutes like, where's my menu? You know? So I think that people just don't know how to follow instructions a lot of the time. They're always like overwhelmed with what's going on and they're just like, I don't even know what to do. But she was a bad audience member.
Yes.
And so like you said, I think the best way that you handled it that time was to give her a job. She was Phelyx's assistant for like half an hour.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, like it was literally 30 minutes she was on stage. And she was probably done. You know, like you mess up this illusion, you get to fix the rest of the show for me. Thanks. I don't know. Was my perception.
I did do that, yeah.
Yeah.
I did do that.
And that's what you have to do sometimes with teachers, with misbehaving students. Give them a job.
Sure.
And then they're not bored anymore. They have to do the job. I mean,
Right.
I'm sure there's kids that won't even do that.
Sure.
Like when my nephew laid on the floor in the middle of his class.
Oh, well, yeah.
Poor baby. But anyway.
Another burlesque show I remember, and it was another inebriated person. You know, that's probably the most common problem at the burlesque shows. But she was entranced by my friend who we call Vegas. He was dressed in a giant cigarette costume, and he was dancing with one of the burlesque dancers. And this person in the audience needed to dance with the cigarette man, had to a degree that she crawled over her little round table, spilling everything that was on the table, to climb onto the stage and stand up and start drunkenly dancing with this guy. And it's at that theater, we always have somebody in the wings. They're on deck, you know, they're the next entertainer or the next act to go out. So he waltzed this drunk person over to the wing. Somebody grabbed that person and took him right out of the showroom.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But it was all graceful. She just vanished.
I didn't hear about, I wasn't there much when Vegas was there.
Right.
So.
Right.
Do you remember the time when someone tried to crawl onto the stage after, or I think it was during VIP? And then I don't know if I was closing the show or I was close to the end of the show, and they crawled onto the stage. They didn't have a VIP ticket. So in this venue, the VIPs who paid extra, like $10, get to go on stage and do a shimmy and shake with their boas. This person, I don't even remember, I think it was a male person, literally crawled across the stage. And they must have been ridiculously drunk. You were there. Maybe you just don't remember. But I was given, because I was doing my top hat number with the cane, with the knob of Swarovski. I was given full permission if he tried again. Because maybe he didn't fully climb on the stage or something. I was given full permission to take him out with my cane.
Yeesh.
Yeah, by the owner. Yeah. Because I'm like, this is my stage.
Well, that show could have been
Really
a
interesting.
bargain.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ticket price could have been a bargain if they see somebody get knocked flat.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
With a metal cane. Yeah. This is a very special cane. Yeah. Anyway, that was a juicy bit. This whole episode seems to be full of juicy bits.
Well, it is, and I think that's probably why we were asked to address this one, because it's a good way to drag a bunch of these little juicy stories out of us. And we have a ton of them. I've had people want to touch my stuff. You know, they believe somehow my props have some secret capabilities, apparatus, some kind of magical secret that they are desperate to learn. And I've had people rush the stage to try to like touch my things to see what the trick is or whatever.
I just don't like other people touching my things.
I don't actually. The stuff I have doesn't really have any secrets. I would share it with them, but I don't like it when in the middle of a show they want to rush the stage. That's a no-no. Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
I've had people make hand puppets on my face through the spotlight. That's annoying.
What?
Yeah, and I have to. They get the dad face. Yeah, the spotlight, especially at the venue we met at, is low enough that in the back you can make big big shadows on the stage.
Wow.
Yeah, how uncouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that just makes them look like the jerk because they paid for the show and then they're ruining it. Wow. Wow.
I talk a lot. I talk a lot on stage. There have been times years ago now, many years ago, that I may have been perceived to have been losing my audience a little bit. We have monitors on stage, and the difference between a monitor and the PA is the monitor feeds sound back to the people on stage. So a lot of singers, for example, or bands, they want to be able to hear the other instruments, which you can't really do when they're behind you. And so that's the reason for the monitors. But the monitors also function as a one-way communication device from the soundboards because they can get on a microphone back there. If they say something, you can hear it as the entertainer. The audience cannot hear it.
I've never had that happen, but okay.
Somebody can give you live notes, and the audience can't really. People in the front row might be able to hear.
Your pasty fell off.
Your pasty fell off.
No. If
Well,
your pasty fell off,
in this case,
blackout.
In this case, the sound guy, he and I have a similar sense of humor. He always called me your dryness.
Wow.
Yeah, but he recognized that in one MC spot, I might have been talking just a little bit, and he played the sound effect of crickets in the monitors.
Did you start laughing?
Yeah, I thought it was funny. He got fired for it.
Oh.
Yeah, he got fired for it, and that's really a bummer. And I suspect that maybe there was some other infractions and they were looking for the last straw because that didn't seem terminable to me. I wasn't offended, but I think there are other entertainers down there who might have been offended. But he knew me well enough. I wasn't offended. He was kind of just giving me notes, like
Live.
pick it up or wrap it up or yeah. So that was an interesting unruly sound engineer during a show.
What other? There had to be something at the other venue besides the ballerina. There had to be something else.
There's a lot of silly feedback. I did a piece where I was doing some mind reading. People wrote down questions about past, present, or future, and my job was to answer these questions. And we got some notes about the show. So I'm passing cards out and little golf pencils to people in the audience and saying you can write a question about the past, present, or future, and we're going to put them all here in this bowl. And without reading them, I was going to answer the questions and then figure out what the question might be. So kind of a Karnak, Johnny Carson did something like that. Oh. And it worked. It functioned well, and there were a lot of amazing bits about it. But we got to know about is our light guy drunk or
it was, is he going to figure out how to use the spotlight?
The spotlight, yeah, because the follow spot was 5 feet behind me, no matter where I was.
I have video of this. I have video of that show. It was so poorly lit. It was really sad.
It was pretty bad.
So sad. But yeah. But I don't think that's like a bad audience member.
No, that's
I
funny.
think it's funny.
Yeah.
No. What other bad audience things did people do that they think it's like their living room? Oh, people do this in restaurants. They take their shoes off in a restaurant.
I've seen that. And at the club we met at, I've seen people rest their feet on the stage.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That's very uncouth.
Oh, yeah. And if they put their drinks up there, their drinks are going down. I did a gig once where it was New Year's Eve. Oh, this is a good juicy bit.
Okay.
It was New Year's Eve, and I don't do go-go dancing. That's never been a thing I like to do. I don't even go to nightclubs and dance. It's not something I like to do. So I got roped into this New Year's gig here in Denver a few years ago. Well, were we together? No. So this was before. So this was probably 8 or 9 years ago, earlier in my burlesque career. And I will never do a gig for this little ever again, especially on a night like New Year's. But it was one of the biggest nightclubs in Denver that's owned by a huge pop star. And we were instructed to do balloon burlesque to this crazy dance music. And if you've ever seen a balloon burlesque number, it's very old-fashioned, kitschy. You're popping balloons to the beat of the music. And we had, I think it was an 8-minute time period. Like, this is the longest. That's a long time to pop balloons. And I think we only had like 20 on. But when we were walking to our go-go stands, a guy reached through my balloons and grabbed me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't do anything about it because, like, the balloons are out here. Yeah. So that was one thing that happened. In that exact same night, I was on the stage and I turned my back and I was doing something. And this girl reached up and smacked my butt. And I was like, are you kidding me? So I kicked her drink off the podium. So she had to go buy another expensive drink.
Wow.
But I mean, who are these people? Like, why do people think that they could treat entertainers like that?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
I got flashed once.
Like, from an audience member?
Yeah. So it was. I was thinking about the feet on the stage,
Mm-hmm.
and I remarked at this person. I said, "Oh, make yourself comfortable," and I was kind of being insulting, and she flashed me. Like, she had a skirt on and she just totally flashed me.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, people get naughty at the burlesque show.
Whenever there's alcohol involved, which
Right.
we're going to talk about in a few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, next week.
Couple weeks.
Yeah. The next episode. It's going to be about drinking.
Okay.
It's like perfect way. Why do people think that they could just treat people like that? And not just entertainers, but
That's the retort that I told you about earlier today. There's no response. You just say, some people suck.
guess so.
Thanks for joining us. Reach us any old time at hello@onebigcaper.com. Thank you.
We can't keep doing this without you. Give us just a little bit of your time by subscribing, sharing, rating, or talking about One Big Caper with someone else. We truly appreciate your support.
We want to hear your stories. Visit onebigcaper.com to get to know us even more.
This episode of One Big Caper was published in 2022. All rights to broadcast in whole or in part are the property of Gazellus Productions, LLC.